pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Do you have any additions to the agenda? Test.
No, I go.
Control the mic again.
Yep. Someone shut off the amplifier. Let's try that. That better?
That works.
Okay. Technical difficulties, please stand by. Okay. Mr. Chairman, additions to the agenda on consent agenda item 2, commissioners warrants. I have add-on warrants this morning dated 10/25 of 22 for $9,495.43, $94.95.43. And then at the bottom of the agenda at 10 o'clock, when Amanda Sandy's coming down, I'd like to roll the acceptance of the U.S. Department of Treasury local assistance and the Hiawatha Snow Blazers into that discussion time as well with Amanda, and not have it as a separate item at the bottom. And with those are my only additions or corrections, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I'll support that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve the consent agenda, approve the minutes of 10/11 of 22, approve the commissioner warrants with the add-on of 94.95.43, approve the auditor warrants of 10/14/22 and 10/21 of 22, and approve the hospital warrants of $792,375.67.
Mr. Jared, move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Nick?
Good morning.
Morning.
Not much for me today. First item I have is to set a bid opening date for our 2023 box culvert contract number 1. You can see there's 5 structures listed there. And we're targeting an opening date of December 13th at 10:30 a.m. You know, we could do it later, but I kind of like to get out in front of the rush. I think it helps with prices, but so that's what we're looking at doing. Nothing necessarily noteworthy there. You know, none of these are the Stone Arch Bridge or anything like that. It's just our typical replacement. So mainly in the northwest part of the county.
Hey, Mr. Jared, move for approval.
Dan will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Next item for me, it was discussed in our last meeting that we want to set a bid opening date for fuel again. Do you want to pick that date now, or we can come back, at a later meeting and do that? It makes no difference to me.
Have you got a date in mind that would work for you?
No, I don't.
Recommend December 27th.
That's fine with me. Yeah.
A lot of times gas seems to be lower at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't really know where the dealer's prices come from. Is whoever sets that open on that day, or I would think it's far enough away from Christmas to where it'd be fine, but
Yeah, because the 26th would be Monday, if anyone has the holiday day
sure. It
off
might, okay, so they should be open.
on the 27th.
Okay. Yep, that should work then. Yeah,
So
I'm fine with that if that works. If that's what you want, makes no difference. to me.
December 27th, work for everybody? Okay. We'll plan on that.
Okay, December 27th at
10?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay.
You need a motion on that?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do a motion.
Okay. I make the motion that set it at 10 a.m. on December 27th.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right. Then just last little follow-up to something we've talked about in the past. It's, we talked about skipping the patches on County Road 18. We did a patch by Ruthven, and that was about, I think it was almost $10,000, but that one was pretty bad and had been settling for quite a while. You know, if we do these on County Road 18, there's 5 of them. They'd have to be, I'm guessing with the freeze thaw, they would settle out to a point where they probably have to be removed next year and redone. So if you use that old number, that's $50,000 to get through the winter. I don't know. We had talked about like leaving them gravel for the winter and maintaining them. You know, I've received some phone calls on you know, windshield damage supposedly. You know, whether or not it happened there, I'm sure a lot of them do, but we can be taken advantage of that way too. I'm not saying people are, but it does happen. But just want to make sure that that's what we're sticking with. Like,
This is on culverts that have set, the recent culverts that were put in that settled.
New ones,
it's new ones where we had to remove the blacktop to put the culvert
so, yeah,
in.
so it still has to settle yet. So it's
Yeah,
on culverts.
it will settle over the winter. They always do. It doesn't matter how good a job you do packing them back in. That's just how it goes over the winter time.
Instead of putting asphalt in there, when you pack the gravel in, would it work at all to throw some calcium chloride in there, or maybe some oil or something to hold it in?
We actually just put some millings in there last week to try that, see if if that helps.
Sure.
Calcium chloride gets potholy with high traffic.
Millings, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's something. So,
They
that's
aren't
probably
bad. I've traveled them several times in the last week. And they're not bad.
okay. Okay. But I was on I don't know. I don't remember what it was last week too, but you know, I'm a little more I don't know, panicky about it or something. Oh, did we do the right thing or not? You know, so I'm second guessing myself, I guess. But I don't know, for that much money, I mean, you think about it, that's a half-mile overlay somewhere else, and like,
No, that sounds like a very prudent approach. I appreciate that.
okay, okay. Well, just so you know, you may get some calls then on. I'll just tell them that, you know, we talked about it and we just don't have that kind of money to spare right now. So, but you know, we'll include it with our overlay job next year, and we'll get it cored out and patched. And they still might settle some after that, but we're gonna overlay the entire road. It's in the 5-year plan. I don't remember, but you know, if they settle a little bit more after that, you know, it'll only be a couple years before it gets the big overlay. So,
You put some signage by it.
They're
as well, too.
very well signed and stuff.
yeah, yeah, and the state did a speed study on that road, and we'll just say that the average speed is quite high on that road. So I'm sure it's an inconvenience to the speed that people normally travel. You know, have to slow down for those, but I don't know.
There's an alternative way get from Edgerton to Woodstock. Let's go through Hatfield. So
Yep, and that road's in good shape. So
a couple guys with Corvettes that do that. So
okay.
they're
Yeah,
the
I can
ones
see
that
where they
complain.
wouldn't want to be in the gravel. So
They're the ones that complain. So.
okay, well, we'll keep with that approach.
I knew who you were thinking.
I'm not sure if we could even get blacktop anymore this year anyway. I feel like those plants usually shut down mid to end of October, but okay. Well, I'll stick with that. I just wanted to bring it up one more time to do my due diligence with it. So, okay. Well, I guess that's all I had for today. Anybody have any questions for me? Or?
Any questions for Nick? Otherwise, thank you, Nick.
All right. Thank you.
Ann Horn. Morning, Ann.
Morning.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to get the sheriff down here.
Sure.
We're running way ahead of time.
I thought it's because Ann was so difficult to deal with. We had to get the
Uh-oh.
sheriff down here.
I got the buzzer here.
That's right.
I'm always afraid of that thing.
Bump it by accident. It'll be your fault.
Yeah, I know.
think you should have stayed down here. We're running ahead of schedule and Ann's all ready to come on. Can you come down? Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. She'll be right down.
We'll wait for him for a minute or so. He's
You want
just
me to start with
upstairs.
the opioid settlement or THC?
What's that?
Did you want me to start with opioid settlement funding?
Yeah, opioids, fine.
Okay.
Okay, they're here. You got backup now.
Right. I'll just kind of go over what the opioid settlement is to begin with, and then we can kind of talk about Pipestone's portion of that. In August of 21, the Minnesota joined a $26 billion agreement with pharmaceutical distributors. There's 3 distributors, and then the manufacturer Johnson & Johnson. So that settlement will bring in about $300 million to Minnesota. All counties, and there's about 30 cities, I believe, that got funding as well. And that was starting on August 1st. I believe that every county had to sign on by January of this year, and then there was a memo of agreement that was signed and sent in. And from my understanding, everybody's gotten their notification of their first payment, and they've gotten their first payment. That first payment, well, I'll kind of back up a little bit. The Johnson & Johnson distribution is over a 9-year period, and the 3 distributors, that is over an 18-year period. But the Johnson & Johnson money will be front-loaded, so we'll be getting that more within the first 3 to 5 years. From what I understand, the payment that you just got was one of 3 for this year, and that payment will be similar to what you receive years 9 through 18. So, for what it's worth. The Pipestone County's expected portion of that settlement is about $340,823.75. And that's just with the settlements that have been reached so far. There are other settlements kind of in the works, and they're hopeful that those settlements will follow the same process as this. So we're hopeful that additional funding will be coming in, and it'll just follow that exact same process. All 6 of our counties, the total will be about $2.6 million. And we discussed this at the Southwest Health and Human Services Board, and it was requested that Carol and myself go to all the county boards, review what happens, and then talk about what it may look like, because the memo of understanding that you signed says that the public health is the chief strategist. The Human Services and Health Board discussed that there's a possibility, and each county kind of gets to decide what they want to do with their own money. But because public health is a lead strategist, so far Rock and Lyon counties have just decided to allow public health to gather community members, have a structured conversation with community, whether it's probably going to be law enforcement and treatment facilities and schools, and those community partners that have been affected by the opioid crisis decide as a team what our recommendation would be, how to distribute that funding, and then bring it back to the health board, the Southwest Health and Human Services Health Board, which has members from all 6 of our counties on it, to bring those recommendations back and then distribute from there. So I guess I'm here just trying to find out what Pipestone County's plan is, and if you had any special requirements for me.
And do we know what the prescribed tracking of this money is going to be? The oversight is going to be quite involved.
It's from what I understand, it's really quite easy. It's like a 1-page document, and then any one project that gets over $25,000, there's gonna have to be a short plan that says, what do you hope to accomplish? What is this funding for? But the tracking, the reporting goes to DHS. From what I understand, it's very simple.
And Mr. Chairman and board members, the funds do come in ACH. Amanda has set up a separate fund as what the requirements are, so it will be tracked separately in a separate fund, so it does not get commingled. And realizing that public health is the lead agency on this, it makes sense that that and all the counties should get together and talk with the counties. It's a great plan. Good start.
Though I did get a good question in Rock County. They said, you know, if Rock County gets this much and Pipestone County gets this much, is there a way to kind of make sure that the Rock County dollars kind of stay in Rock County? And it was a really good question. And I would say, for the most part, I think that absolutely will happen. The only time I can think that it might not happen is if there's, my only thing is, like, if there's a treatment facility in one county, but there isn't any other treatment facilities in the other counties, but they serve all 6 of our counties, there may be additional funding that goes towards that. But just because I think we only have 2 treatment facilities in our 6 counties. So that's the only kind of example that I can come up with, but public health will not be making those decisions. The community, the partner group that we collect will make those.
I feel that still kind of goes towards the total intent or spirit of our joint powers with Southwest Health and Human Services. So we're not all duplicating our efforts, we're working together as a collaborative. So to me, I think it makes perfect sense to collaborate on this as well. And to be splitting hairs, whether there's extra $10 spent in one county or the other, it's still for the common good. So I don't see it to be a big issue. I don't know if.
I agree with you, Dan.
Any other questions for Ann?
So do we need to take specific action on this at this time? Not really.
No, this is just informational. So far, we've received our first payment of just over $10,000 in the fund.
And we're gonna get these payments then from the settlement over a period of years, I understand, so.
I believe total is 18 years, isn't it?
Yeah, yep, but front loaded, we'll see more between the first 3
years.
and 5 years. Yep. The other counties did vote. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, but
Well, this listed as action on the agenda here. An action item. So
I
I'm
didn't-
curious, so.
I don't think there's
So-
any action we need to take on
Yeah,
this
I
at
was
this
gonna
point
say,
anyway.
has public health made any decisions so far, or do they have any inkling of what they're gonna do with any of it, or?
no, we'll gather, like I said, we'll gather community partners and have those structured conversations.
So really, until that happens, we wouldn't need to do anything. I
Well,
mean, cause no money's gonna get spent,
do
basically.
you want me to come back to this board before spending any money, or do you want to vote to allow the health board to follow through on the recommendations on how to spend it?
I think it makes sense to go ahead and take
Come
action
back.
now.
To come back
back?
to each county?
Oh, no, that's gonna encumber.
No,
No, we need to streamline this, and there's no reason for us to micromanage that, so I guess
So-
I'd be more than happy to make the motion that we designate any of the funds that we received and through the opioid settlement to go to Southwest Health and Human Services for them to administer. Does that make sense?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. Hat?
Yes, another hat.
I'm not sure where Pipestone County is on the cannabis infused products. I was in Rock County has a 1-year moratorium in place. The city of Marshall, I think all the cities in Rock County do as well. And I'm quite sure there's others that I just don't know about. They just passed the moratorium once those products became legalized. So I guess there's a couple of different options for Pipestone County. There is a moratorium. that you could do similar. I think this came from the League of Minnesota Cities or,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah, that's where the pamphlet, little information sheet, I received that from after I talked to other administrators and what Rock County was doing. Wanted to get it on the agenda to see what the board's feelings are on this. I think it's pretty much all over the state doing different things. Some are moratorium, some are not, some are letting the private sector deal with it. Cities are doing it. City of Pipestone did enact a moratorium for a year. They did that earlier this year. Unsure if any of the other cities did or not, if Edgerton did or Jasper, anybody like that, but
I think Jasper kinda tabled it, thinking the county would step up.
Rock County did, reach out to us about a month and a half ago because they wanted to pass, an ordinance to actually license those products, similar to tobacco. So I did, as much research as I could from other states and, within the state of Minnesota. There was only 2 or 3 examples in the state of Minnesota for licensing. One of them combined the tobacco ordinance with these products, which in the beginning I thought was a good idea, but then as I looked through it more, I think our tobacco ordinances are pretty set, and I don't think those are gonna change a lot. But I anticipate that the cannabis, the hemp-derived products, I think that's gonna be changing pretty quickly within the next few years. It's on the docket again for legislation this spring, and I think there's gonna be additional. So to keep from, any confusion, I think if you were gonna look at an ordinance to keep those separate would probably be your best option. You know, if you had an ordinance, the ordinance does look similar to the tobacco, ordinance that you have where there's a licensing fee and law enforcement can go in and check. And there has to be regulations on where the products are located, like behind a locked cabinet and, those kinds of things which allows the county and law enforcement to have a little bit more teeth.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from law enforcement.
Exactly, I was thinking the same thing. Got an opinion that they'd like to share?
come on up, Keith, please.
Keith, Mike, both,
Well, a lot of it depends on.
And please speak into the microphone for us, so we.
A lot of what passes, has to be, supported by the prosecutors,
Yeah.
So we can do our job. I mean, we support anything that slows down what's coming, we see. County can pass something, I don't know, it's legal to pass, against, can you be way more restrictive than the state is, that's some of the questions that are out there.
You can be more restrictive, you just can't be less restrictive, similar to tobacco. And actually, the regulatory is the, Board of Pharmacy. It's the regulatory structure for the law that passed.
I know right now testing is a big issue, but to know, there's some private labs that do it, but right now it's really hard to get tests on it. So there's a lot of issues to be worked out yet.
And the testing would pertain to whether or not this product that this retailer wants to sell is or isn't containing THC, is it?
Right, at what level and.
Or oil, or, there's different types of it. With the city having already passed a moratorium for 1 year, is there any benefit to us to stay synchronized with them instead of having you guys having to administer 2 different ordinances with the moratorium? Would it
I
make
guess
sense?
you'd have to look at what theirs is, and if you agree with it, you'd have to look at the wording on it, but it'd be easier for us if it's even over the whole county.
Yeah, because
obviously.
otherwise, if you got different rules for different jurisdictions, instead of having it all the same across the board.
I have several quick questions. Excuse me. Is the city of Pipestone looking at licensing at some point, or are they just against it totally?
I don't know that
Don't know.
answer, I guess.
My question also is, how would a vendor know that the product they're getting meets the standard? I mean,
They probably wouldn't, that's part of the problem.
There are new, there's new, places in Minnesota that are creating products that are approved legal in Minnesota, so they would need to get those products.
Okay.
They're essentially approved in the state.
So you probably wouldn't wanna go with the out-of-state or out-of-the-country version that may or may not,
Right.
qualify.
And one of the reasons that Rock County was looking at the ordinance is they're concerned, not so much about their local retailer, cause they're pretty confident that he's training his employees and they're not selling to anybody that's under 21. They're a responsible retailer, but they didn't want, retail vendors from South Dakota or other places coming to the farmers markets and having products that you have no idea what they are. They just want to make sure that it's a brick and mortar building. They're not trying to restrict the business that they have that's licensed. They just want to make sure that it's all safe.
Right, yeah, cause to me, I mean, this should be no different than alcohol or tobacco where, I mean, there's gotta be a way to regulate how and to whom you sell it to. But I mean, if it's legal, how can you tell a business that they're not allowed to do something that might benefit their business? I mean, that doesn't seem right just from a business standpoint.
Well,
Also, it's legal very close to us.
Well, right.
Across the border.
Yeah,
I think the moratorium was just a pause until all the information could be gathered so that cities and counties could decide where to go from there. I think is the take that many of them took.
I think again, in the past, kind of blindsided a lot of people
Correct.
and.
I mean, I realized to establish our own ordinance obviously would take a little time. And you certainly could have a moratorium while you looked into that.
Right.
But I would like to do a little more research before we pass. I mean, like this one that we got as an example from Rock County. Frankly, some of the stuff I don't even believe is accurate. It's almost more scare tactic, whatever. Some of the statements I just question whether it's even true. So I guess I'd like a little better version before we do anything here, but it's obviously something that we should look at sometime soon.
Well, Ann had mentioned brick and mortar, so of course we all know that we've got, commerce is done.
Right.
Over the internet as well, so forth, and as mentioned, we know we got it just across the border in South Dakota, so we're not on an island here. We have to be able to regulate it and do it in a realistic manner.
Well, that brings up another question. Yeah, are people able to get it online through the mail?
So, Mr. Chair, yes, the answer would be yes,
Really?
illicit or otherwise, but
Right.
I think the moratorium does what, and I'm gonna be a little critical here of the state legislation that got through without much people understanding what this was about. Similar to when growing the hemp and the hemp seed for the Department of Agriculture and all that process a few years ago. And you asked the question, how does the person at the store know or obligated to know if that product they're selling is within the limits? Well, that's their responsibility to know. Similar to the person who puts the hemp seed in the ground, if they bought their seed from someone in the back roads that has more marijuana level in it than it should, that's their bad. I mean, they're the ones that are gonna get their license revoked and they're gonna be in trouble. But the problem's been is that the enforcement side of it, I mean, the cart's before the horse, so to speak. And I think the moratorium just kind of says, whoa, let's hold on here locally and let's figure this out a little bit better. How are we gonna regulate this? The testing is not there for it, in all honesty. On the criminal justice side of it anyways. So if we go to do a compliance check on a vendor that is selling this, that needs to be sent to a private laboratory, which there again, the county attorney should be brought into this, in my opinion, because is the
And then
county
who
attorney's
pays for
office
that?
gonna use that? We do. I mean, we do now.
Okay,
The task force, an example, that comes out of our budget on every private test we have done. Like some other things we have to do, but this is gonna be a pretty good task to take on and expect people to regulate where we don't even know how we're gonna do that yet. So I think that's really what the moratorium does. It doesn't say, we're just not gonna agree with this, period. It just says, let's get everything in order the best we can, knowing we won't have everything, and just do a better job of. And I think they're actually I think a lot of the people who this came from at legislation action in the state level have actually realized that too now and went, whoa, wait a minute here. I've read a lot of things that have said, been in a lot of meetings that people have said, yeah, we probably went ahead a little too quick on this. So.
But Chair, if I could, and to dovetail onto that, what Officer Heyman was saying with the state legislators, how they really kicked the can down the road to us. And if I can, years ago, and when we talked about the tobacco ordinance, we had a lot of discussion here about that as well too. And I really feel that was another case where the state, instead of dealing with it because of whatever political ramifications or whatever it was, they just kicked it down to us. And I just don't appreciate that. If this is an issue that involves the entire state, why is it being left up to each county to have to deal with it individually? So that's my own opinion about some of the dysfunction at that state level. But that doesn't answer the question we've got here today, is do we put a pause on this? Do we put a moratorium on this as we sort things out? So it is within our jurisdiction, our authority, just to say, let's wait and see what's going on here. But we need, do I hear that we need to talk to our county attorney to find out where we're at legally, or legally we can today make that decision just to put a moratorium on this?
Well, I think the question, man, probably is like Luke says, he has some concerns about what's in the one that's presented as a template or whatever,
Exactly.
but that may be something to advise the county attorney and ask for a response. I mean, I'm sure the county attorney's office would be more than happy to know kind of what the moratorium's gonna involve as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
What does apply to other counties maybe doesn't always apply to us, but I think as a general whole, the whole point of it's in good faith of let's just slow this down a little bit. And so, is the ending result gonna be, we all know it's gonna be probably, but let's get
State gonna fix it?
yeah, well,
That's a good question, right?
right, that's the main question is, if that does come to the point of being fixed, is it possible? I mean, can criminal justice even do it? I mean, are our labs ready for it? Staffing is an issue everywhere, and we already know that is an issue on some of our stuff, so when it gets to labs work and stuff, so.
It just made me wonder when a lot of the legislators made it sound like they weren't even aware that it was in a passed bill.
They don't
And
read
then
them.
it makes you think, well, so does anyone read this stuff before it happens, or?
It was like 3 a.m. It was thrown into the omnibus bill. Yep.
Right,
They said, wait, did we just pass weed? Like, what happened? And they had no idea.
right.
And that I think that's 100% says it all. It just, I think a lot of things took place that maybe not everyone had done the best research on, or it had happened without a lot of people's knowledge. And
We're making a
why
great
that
case
was.
for why there should not be an omnibus bill.
I have a couple of questions. Alcohol, there are various levels that you're allowed to have. Is there an allowable level for this, or is it any in your system is bad? And how long is it in your system?
So when it comes to the enforcement of a
Impaired
substance in a person walking down the street, there is no such crime. You can have any type of controlled substance in your system and walking down the street as long as you're not committing other crimes. Driving a motor vehicle is way different. Impairment is where that defines it. So if you prove impairment through a lot of other pieces of the process we do in DWI, investigation and arrest, the blood test of if there's something on board, so to speak, of the person who was arrested for the DWI impairment, that solidifies or supports, the crime of why the prosecutor would follow through with that.
So there is no safe level.
No.
What does this test cost, if I may ask? Hundreds or tens?
No,
or-
it's
Depends what, we've tested, like we've taken stuff off shelves and tested the level, cause there is a set level for what can be in
in
like
stuff.
wax or something, and it's over $100.
I think it's $150 for a simple
so it's not
for
in-
a simple test of there is the 0.03 above or below, or there isn't, but then again, you have to understand that's a whole process. Like the Minnesota County Attorneys Association, the AG's office should be involved with. Are they going to accept the accreditations of the labs we're using? Because it's not the BCA lab. And the BCA lab's made it clear that they don't have, at this point,
They don't wanna do it.
they don't have the opportunity. Their backlog is way too much on, I mean,
They don't
there's
have
a
the
lot of things they're not
capacity.
analyzing today that they were doing 5 years ago even for us,
Right.
you know, so I mean, it's just because of, a lot of things.
If you go to one shop, there might be 6 products you gotta check. Also, you're talking $1,000 real quick,
Yeah,
just to verify they're
they're legal.
legal.
And so it's been, our policy, when we have to deal with it, we do. But it's involved with a criminal investigation that's more than likely already ongoing. Are we going out to a store, knocking on the door and doing that alone by itself without other complaints, information and stuff? Not at this point. But we certainly will if that's the wishes, of everyone.
I mean, if they allow a product to be sold with this .03 amount in, wouldn't it also be legal to have the .03 in your system?
Not when you're driving a motor
No,
vehicle.
I know, I realize not for driving, or, I think they gave some other examples about if you're, certain jobs, like law enforcement, you're not able to because you have a gun.
Yep.
CDLs.
Yeah, CDLs.
Correct.
Any federal, it's still illegal federally, so any federal regulation still has to follow that. The state laws don't supersede the federal laws, so.
But like you say, for somebody just walking down the street, theoretically, they wouldn't be guilty of a crime.
Not unless they're committing another crime.
Right.
But under the influence itself, simply minding your own business, walking down the street, and not possessing,
Right.
physically possessing anything, that's not it's never been a crime.
Although
Whether
if
it's-
you're possessing these things that are legal to sell, I mean, it must be legal to have it if they can sell it.
As long as the levels are correct, and that's where a lot of people are running, and there's not a liquid THC in it. So that's the other piece of the puzzle, is we find a lot of people will possess like a vape cartridge, thinking it's raspberry vape. Vapes, I don't understand that at all, but I know from the criminal justice side of it, if there's liquid THC in there, that's a felony. So you have a lot of younger people, especially juveniles or such, who think they're just vaping.
And
They're actually committing a felony by possessing that, and that's the fine line we walk, right? Of education and enforcement, and of course, just the danger of it itself. Granted, if you're buying it uptown on a brick and mortar store that maybe has went through the regulations, you should be safe.
Of course, a
Hopefully
juvenile
there's
shouldn't
not-
be allowed to have a vape cartridge to begin with.
Hopefully, there's not fentanyl in it.
Right.
Hopefully there's not, this doesn't have an opioid of some, all those things come into play, right? And I think that's part of this moratorium discussion at a lot of local government, from what I'm understanding, is let's take some time to think about this.
And from a public health perspective, this is just like one tool. No one thing works on preventing alcohol, tobacco, vaping, whatever. But it's tools that we have in our toolbox that we can add to. We need to do more education. We've had reports from schools that parents insist that their kids can vape CBD products because it helps them calm down at school. Well, schools don't allow vaping products, so we've had parents come get their kids, put them in their car, drive around, let them vape, and then drop them off back at the school. Because they have no idea what's in those products. And the other thing is, if they're not regulated, you can order the exact same thing 3 or 4 times, and you're going to get a completely different product each time you order it. So this is just, I think the ordinance and all of that is just one more kind of tool in your toolbox that you can use. I'm interested to hear what Demeen is.
Well, in that example, wouldn't the driver be affected if they were vaping in the vehicle?
That could be the case. There again, the impairment of the driving actions have to support that.
Right.
So just the inhalation of the secondhand vaping alone wouldn't say this person's going to be arrested for DWI. There'd be some kind of impairment, whether that's driving conduct, typically on top of a drug evaluation expert coming in and doing a DRE evaluation. Those kinds of things are all building a case for a criminal, a crime that
Is that hard to prove?
It can be difficult. It gets more difficult with marijuana.
Or you don't have a blood test or whatever?
There will still be a blood test drawn to support the results of a DRE. the thing of it is above, having marijuana on board or something similar to that is not alone and by itself conviction of a DWI. You need to have the other supporting indications, driving conduct, a DR. That's why the sheriff's tried to add our drug recognition program, tried to add staffing, because we're seeing such an increase of that type of DWI related cases that we really need that support, and we've gotten it thankfully from you guys. So, but it does, it's a balancing act, and your prosecutor will tell you the same thing, or county attorney's office. We work closely with them on these things, and we have to, because there are a lot of details that need to be done right the first time.
Right.
You got one chance. And it's not about just really catching everyone and putting them in jail. It's about education and not reoffending and letting people know, hey, this can be, I mean, you could have a group of children that would take a bunch of vape cartridges, and if it had a lace with fentanyl, you'd have several deaths in a matter of hours. And that's what's more, I mean, it's all concerning, but that's really concerning for those of us in law enforcement and public health, right? As we know, we see it. Not maybe locally every day, but we talk to people who do, and that's scary.
Have you seen the fentanyl cartridges around?
I wouldn't say we've seen fentanyl in a vaping cartridge here locally, but we certainly have dealt with overdoses related to fentanyl.
Oh, yeah.
And we've reversed a few with Narcan ourselves. Both EMS and law enforcement have locally.
Right.
We've saved people's lives. So it's here. I mean,
Right.
if anybody doesn't believe that, they're
And obviously
deadly
there's
wrong.
ones
No
that
pun
haven't
intended.
made it either.
What's that?
There's ones that have died from it too.
There have been, yes. We get a report every week, Keith and I do, from the BCA of overdoses. I'm sure public health gets them too in the state. We get them from South Dakota. Little red triangles are everywhere, and those are the ones who have died, and they're close to home.
Right.
You're not immune from it no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is all part of the discussion, right? I mean, it all needs to happen at one time, even though it's not going to be perfect. Let's do the best we can. So,
Take our time and get it right.
Sheriff, I could think out loud a little bit. Sheriff Reeman, we've got the law liaison committee made up of citizens, city, county officials. Would you think it would be maybe appropriate for us to have this discussion and maybe have the county attorney sit in on those discussions and come up with a plan so that you are coordinated between county attorney, city, and also get some input from the citizens?
Yeah, we should all be on the same page.
Would that be maybe a starting place before we jump the gun here and pass a moratorium? Let's get ourselves informed first. Would
And
that
maybe
be-
with the county attorney, you could draft a moratorium that'd be,
Yeah.
something better than this.
Do you think the domain would be open to that type of discussion with that group?
I would think
It'd
so.
be a good place to start anyway.
Cause he's the one who's gonna have to prosecute it, so he wants it done right also.
Exactly. And there's nothing worse for law enforcement than to have a law that you have to enforce, that you can enforce.
well, yeah, I mean, the first step is if the prosecutor doesn't support what you're enforcing, he did nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it happens and starts there.
Yeah. And is it even possible?
Yeah, and I think collaboratively between the two departments, law enforcement
Yeah.
and prosecution divisions, that's where it all happens. And we're very fortunate here. I can say, I'm obviously biased, but I can say that we have a pretty well-oiled machine here in communications with the county attorney's office, the sheriff's office, and we get results. You can see it by the criminal complaints. Unfortunately, we'd rather do it through education, but sometimes it does take that enforcement. So.
So that next step, you wanna go that route?
I guess that'd be my suggestion, Keith, if you wanna, because we're due for a committee meeting
It was
anyway.
actually supposed to be in October, but we didn't have one, so we
Yeah.
can schedule one.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit earlier. That'd be maybe a good place to start.
Okay.
And Steve, if you wanna sit in on that meeting as well too, that would be great.
That would be great.
I would only just point out that the liaison committee meeting I think Dan's referring to does not involve the other communities in the county. That is strictly a city of Pipestone liaison committee that we have because of the county contract with law enforcement with them. That was set up
That's a good point. Mike.
1997.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that but I'm just saying your feedback will be isolated
Yeah, sure.
to the county officials that represent the sheriff and the city of Pipestone, who have people assigned to that, but not your other smaller communities. And they should definitely have a voice too, I would think.
Get like a little group together and
Yeah.
how it works and.
And again, this is a starting point, so if we start just with the committee at this point, and then after we then pull in the other communities, or have the other communities come right away, whatever is workable. We don't wanna get too large of a group, cause then it's hard to effectively come to a decision.
I think it starts with the county attorney's office having some advisement from them.
Yeah.
That's really what's,
Right.
and there's no doubt they will. There's no doubt in my mind that Domain will be absolutely on board with working with this.
But
We
yeah,
just have to check with them.
If you wanna reach out to the other cities too, see if they wanna come to that would be great.
Anything else? We've got a starting point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
And can you
Ann.
put on a third hat while you're here, as long as you're changing hats? Would you give everybody up update of where we're at with the hydroponics shed?
Sure. I just got an email from John at Grow Shed. A grow shed is a fully enclosed hydroponic 8x12 shed that we purchased through the statewide health improvement partnership. Last year we had some additional funding, so the food shelf has agreed to be a host for one of those. The Nobles County Electric has one, and we went and visited it last spring, and it's really interesting. You can grow vegetables all year round, which is cool. And he just emailed me yesterday and said that they have a new process for additional insulation. So the two that we'll be getting are brand new. It's the first ones that have that additional insulation. So they're in the process of making them, and they're a little bit delayed, but they'll get them to us as soon as they can.
Yep. A little background on this, we talked to Roger then at the food shelf, and he said that they would be interested, because it takes manpower as well too. So again, the combination of food shelf and also senior citizen center would be a good combination. So they applied then to ship
Yes.
then for this, and this was 6 months ago or whatever. So that's kind of how this process got started. So, and it even
A year ago.
It was a year ago. In December, we got approval. Yep.
That's right. And of course, with their proposed building project, it's where are we gonna physically set this thing? So it looks like where the food shelf's at now, we're probably gonna set it just on the west side of the building, because it does take a 20 amp, 110 volt circuit for the pumps and the lights and so forth. And it says it creates enough heat by itself. It doesn't need extra heat, again, because of the
Correct.
super insulation. And then the water, even though it'll be in the wintertime, you don't have to have a hose running to it all the time. It's got tanks, you just fill the tank up with the hose, and it's a pretty well self-contained unit, so kind of an exciting project.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wish I could have one at my house. So we'll have media there when we get it in, and we'll do a splash article on it. So
Well, thank you, Ann.
thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Good morning.
Morning, Amanda.
She's always got that smile on her face.
Wonder what she's up to, right?
All right, so, we received the 2021 audit from Ide Bailey. So, I told them that, I could go over it with you. If there are any questions you need me to reach out to them on, I certainly can.
I have a question right off. On page 4 of the short portion, the letter or whatever, they have 2 paragraphs that I am assuming have something to do with Wabasha County. How does that relate to us?
Where are you looking at, Lou?
On page 4, these 2 big paragraphs under other significant matters, findings, or issues. Talks about South Country Health Alliance, and then the Reed's Landing Water and Sanitary District and Regional Railroad Authority in Wabasha County. Obviously, that has nothing to do with Pipestone
that's
County, it's on
not.
the other end of the state.
Yeah, I'll check on that.
Problem.
Yeah.
I'll check on that because obviously that must be a typo.
Right.
Trying to remember, I know there was something that thought that they had sent a follow-up on, and I wonder if that was this or not, but. Okay. Okay, anything else before I get started? Okay, all right. So, like Luke said, that, letter is kind of like the governance letter that they kind of report some of the general information along with the recommended journal entries are attached to that letter. And the big packet being the actual financial statement. So they have their actual audit report on pages 2 through 5. And it talks about what things they did audit, what things they didn't, and what type of assurance they give. So, going into page 8. This is the governmental fund balance sheet, and it lists the assets, liabilities, deferred inflows, and fund balances. So, and this is just for governmental funds. This does not have anything with the hospital in, since they have their own audit. We have a separate column for general fund, roads and bridges, and then the non-major funds. Those actually, that third column there, they are split out on page 74. So if you want to see the detail of those non-major governmental funds, that's going to be on page 74. And so we have total governmental assets of $17,468,998, liabilities of $700,997, deferred inflows of resources, which are unavailable revenues, are $5,033,102, and total fund balances of $11,734,899. And those, the fund balance, the detail on those are going to be on page 37. So we can look more into those as we go through, but I'll try to keep us going in order. So as far as the actual balance sheet, do you guys have any questions specifically on those numbers? Okay. So then going to page 10 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So this is the, again, revenues, expenses, and net change. So similar to the other, we got the column for general fund, special, and the roads and bridge, special revenue fund, and then the other non-major, which the detail on that's going to be on page 75. So our total revenues for governmental funds was $19,866,145. Expenditures were $17,994,330. And then we had a few other financing sources and uses, which ended up being an expense of $200,793. So our net change in fund balance for 2021 for all governmental funds is $1,671,22. So, and then it does list after that net change, it has your beginning of the year fund balance, and then some inventory changes, and then the end of the year fund balance. So,
And they're going in the right direction.
yes, yep. Any questions on that particular one? That's a lot of numbers. The biggest thing is if you have any questions when you're going through and looking at some of these individual numbers, just reach out and we can. When we get back to the back, you'll be able to see a little bit more analysis of each specific fund. So I had referenced page 37 being the detail of the fund balances. So I guess I just wanted to let you know that, we wanna look at that. As you can see, we've kind of already gone over, usually I come and present those general fund, restricted and assigns and that sort of thing, so you've already kind of looked at those general fund balances that are listed there, which is the majority of all of them. But that is for you to peruse, and if you have questions, you can let me know. So page 60 is where you can get more of the analysis by fund. This is the budget versus actual comparisons, and it's by fund. So like page 60 is the general fund specifically. So we've got the revenues and expenses, which we had already seen on the other report, but we get to compare it with the actual budget to see where we compared budget-wise. And so, you know, with actual revenues, we actually had more revenue than what had been budgeted. Expenses, we did have more expenses than what had been budgeted, but the difference is the fact that we had more revenue versus the increase in expenses. So we also had some property sales that were not budgeted for, that was revenue. And so page 61 is the road and bridge comparison of budget versus actual. And they also had more revenue and more expenses than what was budgeted, but again, the difference was more revenues exceeded the increased expenses, so.
And
there are
where did the
variance.
revenues, where did the additional revenues come from?
So I would have to specifically look at that, but if you look at the actual versus the final, the intergovernmental, which is gonna be AIDS and that sort of thing, that was higher. That was 6.5
State or federal
versus
money,
5.3.
Yep.
Well, same with the previous budget too. The intergovernmental was a lot higher.
So we probably had, COVID assistance in
Do you
21.
think part of that could have been ARPA money or something coming to highway?
Probably, yeah.
Well, I mean, for the general fund, it could have been. Not for road and bridge, it would have been probably just additional state
Projects.
aid or something of that nature. But in the general fund, it could have been ARPA or.
ARPA is in there. A lot of the ARPA money is in that deferred. We're not recognizing it yet because we haven't spent it yet.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of the expenses are happening more in 22 and beyond. But
I mean, the revenue would still be shown in 21, wouldn't it?
it is part of that deferred, so it's actually there. It did come in our cash statements, but in these statements, they would have put it on as a deferred
Okay.
revenue. So, and we're gonna wait to recognize that revenue when we spend the money.
You're lucky you can do that. At the hospital, it's the opposite. They make you recognize it immediately.
Yep. So. All right, and so, any other questions on that? If we go over to page 76, then that continues on with these budget versus actual for the non-major funds, the family service fund. 77 is the ditch fund, and 78 is the medical facility bonds fund. So those again are the non-major. There's not quite as much in those, but we still split those out so you can see the budget versus the actual. The ditch fund, you can see that the actual expenses versus the budget was quite a bit different, but they had chosen to do the, that cleanup project, so. Any questions on those three?
But you're just getting that money back this year then.
Yeah, so, yes, they did an assessment then.
Right.
So, it was a interfund loan, which I believe is in one of these notes here, on page 38. There was the 123,000 that was between the general fund and then the ditches. And so, again, that will come back the other way in 22 when those assessments come in. Okay. So then, again, we're kind of, I know that we're really hitting just a few of the major spots, just to not give you too much. And page 82 and 83 are the actual findings. 81 is the letter that goes with that. Or actually, 81 is the report on legal compliance, which they didn't find anything with that. So there were no findings with that. But the three findings are the segregation of duties, preparation of financial statements, and the material journal entries. And those are, I guess, common for a lot of our entities. I mean, not just within our county. They're kind of going to continue unless we can make some changes, you know, due to our size. Segregation of duties is pretty limited. We do have Eide Bailey prepare the financial statements, so they put that in. But other than that, so it's kind of a lot of stuff thrown at you. Anything jump out at you otherwise that questions on?
Just impressive to get all those intergovernmental funds. It shows that, you know, Steve and Nick are working hard to, you know, see any additional monies that they can find. And to the tune of 1.2 million, Road and Bridge, that was huge, so. Just appreciate how hard everyone works for that.
Was that for the bridge by Island? Some of that probably.
Yeah, oh yeah, big time, yeah. Yep.
Both of them. Yep.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, well, if you, as you look at them, if you have any other questions, just let me know. I will reach out to them on that letter.
Do you need a motion to accept the report?
I'll make that a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Pass on to your entire
Staff,
department our
yes.
appreciation. Good job.
Yes, it was nice to get it done after the 2021 was done just in a few months ago. So,
Mandy, we'll get with Eide Bailey and have them change that to opening letter.
yep, and I will
Change
forward
page 4,
that.
and we'll get that back to the board here, so you can take a look at that too.
Yep.
Updated one.
And as long as we have Amanda here, we have the Snow Blazers, money, grant money.
Yeah, so again, it's kind of been an annual thing from what I look back at. It's been going on for quite a few years, and in 21, we had done, the Pipestone County had issued a resolution acting as the legal sponsor, so Snow Blazers had put in an application for funds, and we heard back from them, and they will be getting $35,505.36 for the 2023 grant.
action, so I'll make a motion for this.
To accept it.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor of accepting?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Amanda.
I have one more item with Amanda, Mr. Chairman, that's the acceptance of the U.S. Department of Treasury Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Grant funding.
What is this for?
This, it's a portion of ARPA money that Treasury is putting out to counties across the country and Minnesota that get federal funds called PILT, Payment in Lieu of Taxes. And we get a very minute quantity of PILT money for federal wildlife land that they have here. We get $1,219 a year, right, Amanda? That's what I looked up, that's what I could find, that's all we get on this. And because we're one of 2,086 counties in the United States that have PILT land, as part of the ARPA funds, the Treasury decided that any county that got PILT money should get money from the federal government under the ARP program. And so we're gonna receive $100,000 over 2 years.
Oh, a lot
So
more
we're
than
gonna
we
get-
get in Pilt.
Exactly, and looking at the list here, Jackson, Lincoln Lion, Murray Nobles, Pipestone, and Rock, all in our southwest district, all will be receiving virtually the same amount of money through that federal program. The application of this, I actually wasn't even aware of it until I was communicating last week with my administrator counterparts around the region and saying, you know anything about this, see this? And we started looking at it and got the information on it. Initially, I couldn't find anything on it and honestly felt that we were not eligible for this because we couldn't find anything on it. And then we started sending these out and find the information, and it's like, it's all coming through the same program as the ARP money, and it took all of about 7 minutes to fill out the application online, and waited for an email to go to Amanda to sign it, and away it goes. And so this money can be used for, easiest way to look at it, can be used for virtually anything that we're using ARP money for, general government expenses.
It doesn't have to go just to conservation projects.
No, no, not at all. This is,
That's sweet.
I would recommend we roll this into our ARP funding money and use it for projects.
Now, where I've heard the payment in lieu of taxes before has been in regards to conservation property, like with Pheasants Forever, when they buy property and so forth, because they've taken it out of production. Is that the only place where PILT has been applied before? I'm not all that.
I think locally that could be the only thing, cause
Yeah, it is, it's, there are other counties that get PILT for federal, timberlands, wooded
National
areas, things like
forests.
national parks, forests, that type of thing.
And the concept is because you've got land that's been taken off of the tax rolls because it's gone into conservation, whether it been
Right.
pheasants and so forth, because pheasants, I don't
That's
believe,
exactly the concept.
yeah.
That you're not getting the tax revenue you would be getting if you were taxing it locally
Right.
because it's in federal. And
So
so
it's
they
not
get
like this money's earmarked to have to go back to
No.
such groups to buy more land. This again is payment in lieu of the taxes that we would have received off these monies. That basically it's reduced our tax capacity because that land's coming off of there.
Right.
It's stated specifically on page 2, item 2, use of funds. The award funds may be used to cover any cost incurred on or after March 15th of 21 for any governmental purpose other than lobbying activity as provided in paragraph B.
Yeah, so,
Recommendation is to roll the money into our ARP funds and use it for projects.
okay,
Mr. Chair, I move for approval.
and I will second that.
All in favor?
Further discussion? And maybe, again, just off the top of my head, because of our ongoing support of trails, could we perhaps consider maybe using some of this money to help develop our trail system? Just throwing that out as an idea to think about in the future, so.
Certainly. That's definitely an option.
Any engineering costs, anything like that?
Yeah, help give that a little bit of a boost. As we know, that's been an uphill struggle trying to get those trails developed.
Speaking of, are they still planning to do that stretch between stock?
Yeah, there's 2 miles yet on the west side of Woodstock that are at grade, but they have not been paved yet. And again, my understanding, and help me out with this, Chris, is the idea is that will be part of the next grant proposal.
I thought those two were already
thought that was
approved.
approved
Yeah,
already.
there was 2 grants.
We did get the paving for those 2, just
Yeah.
those 2 alone?
I think so.
Okay,
That-
because
that-
there was the Curry Loop, there's some work that's gotta be done there to rehabilitate that Curry Loop, and I didn't know if that was.
Right,
part
but
of
I
that.
thought the
That's a
2
different
miles was
project.
already approved, but
Right.
weren't they gonna do that this year yet?
They were supposed to. I don't know if they ever got to do that or not. I don't think so.
No,
It hasn't happened yet. but-
No. No, but I'm pretty sure they were approved for 2 grants to get that portion done.
Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Personnel. Don't have anything. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
Then District 8 meeting. It's Thursday.
Mr. Chairman, I put this on there as I will not be able to attend the meeting to give the county report on Thursday. Linda and I are headed to North Dakota for a funeral of a relative of hers, a cousin, so we will not be around. On Thursday, we'll be heading up to Bismarck, so I'll be gone Thursday and Friday. So I wanted to put this on here so whoever's going to the meeting and wanted to give the county report could do so. I know who's all going to that at this point, but
Not sure yet.
I thought it was in Redwood, but it's.
Wyndham.
Wabasso.
Was it Wabasso?
In Redwood County. So you all got a copy of my little bullet points in your packet there. Those are the specific questions that AMC had asked. So I've added some items in there and from levy increases, what are your key drivers? Union negotiations, county position, hardest to fill. Put down the right now highway maintenance worker and highway shop mechanic, sheriff's office and jail operations are fully staffed, thankfully. And we'll need a new county assessor in 2023 and have not had any applications for county assessor yet. When it comes down to legislative items, I wasn't sure if there's anything that, any more legislative priorities that the board
Highway
wanted to put
23.
on here as well. That's why I put it here, so you guys can add things to it, so.
Highway 23 upgrade.
Yes,
Under key legislative,
yes,
Okay.
Yep.
because we need that earmarked funding, prior to 2024, or it won't get done.
It's too bad they couldn't take that road to this meeting, see in what shape it's in.
Right. Or senator and representative could if they attend. But they're the ones sponsoring the bill, so.
I added that. Okay, added that to the list. Any other ones on there?
Anybody have anything else with it?
That, and everybody's going except for Steve, or I intend to,
I plan on
you're
going.
gonna be there?
Yep.
Right. I've missed too many of them, I gotta get to another one.
You going, Luke?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so I'll add that to the list and I'll email that out to everybody so you can have a copy of that when you take it over there and you guys can draw straws or wherever you want to determine who's gonna
We'll do it as
You'll
a
figure it out.
team effort.
There we go. We can each take
Everybody takes a bullet.
bullet. Yeah, there we go. We can do that.
The address where you're going, it's the Wabasso Community Center, 1429 Front Street. It's Wabasso, shouldn't be too hard to find. Like I said, look for all the cars when you get there. So again, I apologize, I won't be able to be there, so.
And I apologize for that, Steve.
Certainly understandable.
Yep.
Okay, any other business? come before the board today.
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
Well, second.
stand adjourned.
Hour and 15 minutes. Right off Main Street, looks like, so.
Hour and 15 minutes to get there?
72 miles.
We just,